motion accepted. I think we are recording.
Are we supposed to be over in AltSpace? Did I download and install something for nothing?
Well, I put Noah as number 3. And so if Noah has shown up by the time we get to number 3, then we will all jump onto AltSpace because I've downloaded it. And in fact, let's say that we're going to start the recording, and I've done that. And here's our October agenda. One of these days I will get all the slides changed and I'll have the right month on that. So that was our welcome. That's our leadership, many of whom are here. We'll talk about going on mute. Chat should work. If you're looking to hire or be hired, post in chat. And because we're recording, I'll post the recording soonish, unless we decide not to. And if you have not installed AltSpace, do the Windows Shift S and take that URL down and go get it installed, because if Noah shows up, we're going to jump into AltSpace and get all sorts of virtual. We've just had someone else join. Tina, good to see you. We'll give Tina just a minute to write down that Alt-VR, get AltSpace VR. And it's about a 4-minute install, and so you can do that while Christian is talking.
It's also now pasted into the chat if you'd rather just click.
Oh, there you go. That's a great idea. I gotta go back to the right slide.
I'll just, somebody take note. Second time this year, Greg has added value. Awesome.
And it's only March.
I know. You're on a roll.
This could be a new record. Oh, did somebody be, here I am doing gymnastics trying to get into the chat, and McMurray's got me beat. So not only did he add value, he did it quickly. All right, so we have put together 4 potential topics. I guess my camera's over here. 4 potential topics. Christian is going to kick it off talking about Teams list app and onboarding. Did I get that right, Christian? More or less. He's gonna riff on something. Greg will then riff on the Power Automate desktop that was announced and is, I think, free to everybody. And I'm excited about that because I've always wanted to learn something new. If Noah has arrived by then, we will get into virtuality with Noah. And then I will finish up with a short discussion of Microsoft Viva, which once I dug into it, found to be somewhat disappointing. And so we'll discuss that, and we'll decide if you guys agree with me.
Sorry. I had to unmute so I could laugh out loud, literally there.
Yeah. I was all excited, and I started doing the research so I could present the excitement, and I thought, oh, we'll talk about that. In the trade, we call that a teaser. So stick around clear to the end. We'll talk about why Zollinger is mildly disappointed with Project Viva. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing so that Christian can take over. And I yield the floor to Mr. Buckley.
And I will unmute. So this is, somehow I got tricked into presenting something. What I had suggested, it's a really cool thing, resource that's out there. Hopefully everybody is aware of adoption.microsoft.com. If you've not, take a day, block it out, and just dedicate. Because if you own any aspect of owning, Microsoft 365 in your organization, so this is the site. Does everybody remember what it looked like a year and a half ago, where it was almost like a Corel Draw created flat squares with like some hyperlinks, where now it looks like an actual Microsoft property. So, I mean, kudos to the team at Microsoft for going through and building this out, because it's something that we always say that, like, for those of us that came from the SharePoint world, that a lot of the reason why the SharePoint community was so strong for such a long time and still is, was because of the lack of content and help from Microsoft. And I wonder, seriously, whether the community would be as strong if Microsoft was on the ball with the content. There's always room for improvement. Yes, yes, yes. But anyway, so lots of cool stuff that's in here, but specifically what was announced, like I caught some blurb, and it might have been like in a Cashman post. I'm sure it was Mark Cashman with Microsoft, who was singing the praises as he owns technical marketing for lists, but that there is a dedicated Microsoft adoption site for Microsoft lists. So up at the products, click on it, drop in there, and you have then all of these resources that are out there. Why wasn't this there when they launched it? Well, you know, it came out a lot sooner after the launch than I think other products and new products announcements have. So I think that they're getting faster about this. But working for an ISV, one thing that we always do when we launch a product is we have stuff like this available on the launch day, because that's what people are looking for on launch day. But that's me. That's how I would do it if I were in control of you know, what is Microsoft worth? Hundreds of millions of dollars. So anyway, looking through, what's great about this is that so it worked where you are in the adoption journey. So hey, I'm just getting started, want to find out what's possible out there. So the playbook, which goes through more of the details, you click on each one of these, it takes you to the PDF, so you can actually go. I don't want to download something. That's a presentation. The lookbook is great. So this started with the SharePoint lookbook, for those that remember, when the new, more beautiful versions of SharePoint came out, and they created a printed copy of the lookbook. And now you have just the digital versions of these things. It's just a great, it's very marketing centric. That's what it's there for. But to give you an idea of what is possible. And it even walks through some of the core. Oh, look at the product placement too, with the Surface Pros. But gives you an idea of what's possible, and how you can utilize that. So that's what the lookbook is. But the list of the again, it's another deck, is going to download it. I'm not going to open each one of those presentations, but we'll walk you through each of the templates, the scenarios that are out of the box available for lists. And of course, you can go in with Microsoft Lists. You can build them, whether you start it in SharePoint, you build them within Teams in the app. Is everybody using lists? I think that there was like a lackluster response when the organizing committee, when we talked about this as a topic, like who's actually using it. But it is if you've been spending any time going and building out these kinds of lists for reporting or tracking or whatever it is, and either doing it in Excel or in SharePoint, I mean, the benefit to having it in Teams is you have the broader audience that are not SharePoint centric to navigate over and to find and doing their business there. If you are a Teams organization, then you want to do that tracking there. And of course, you can still do it in an Excel spreadsheet and share that elsewhere, or have a real-time list. If you need to export it to a spreadsheet, you can do that, but in a live real-time list that is shareable by everybody within your project team, then lists is a better place to go and do that. But it comes up with, again, resources for helping if you are in charge of getting more people to use Microsoft Lists. Then you have these adoption and communication templates and video content, training materials. Microsoft, of course, is really big on building out a champions program. And if you're in a larger enterprise with any of the solutions, and as you saw me as I scrolled down shortly, these other tools that also have adoption resources up on the site all follow the same pattern of building champions. Especially if you're in a large organization, identifying the handful of people who really will go in and dig in and learn this and become your experts, that will help you with your adoption and engagement. It'll help with training, reduce the cost of training, reduce the time it takes to get the entire organization up, because it's not just you or a couple of the engineers in your organization that are training everybody, but you have now these power users that really kind of grab the horns, the bull by the horns, and get out there and wrestle with this thing. And then, of course, the security stuff. I've not gone through any of these, so I don't know what this stuff is, but surveys, the productivity score, kind of other things. They're pushing their other wares on that one. But this stuff that's community based is fantastic. These other three, which are primarily around Microsoft lists adoption. So no demo of actual Microsoft lists. I'm actually using it for a couple things internally in my environment. We don't even have external sharing enabled on the AvePoint environment. It's very locked down, especially we're getting ready to go public like any day. We're just literally waiting for the email to come across from the SEC that everything's done. So everything's very locked down. But I am using it to track, as just for example, I've got a cross matrix team across our organizations tracking co-sell opportunities with Microsoft. If you're in the space and know what that is, fast track activities and other initiatives. I've got 4 major projects that I'm doing, co-marketing projects with Microsoft right now. And so all of that's being tracked via the lists, because what we found, like I've got Planner and nobody responds to any of the tasks that are assigned to them. We're moving away from using email, and just about everything is happening in conversations in Teams. So I said, well, I'm going to go in and build this where people see it and are working. And already with it partway built, I've already had people going in and finding it themselves, seeing the activity, and then saying, hey, have you thought about adding this? And so it's for our organization, for our culture, having this dashboard view, this tracking mechanism using the list app. And I've been referring people to go in on Teams and to pin the app, the list app to the left nav, so that it's really easy to get to those things. And then you can see all of your lists. You've got the homepage for all of your lists, and whether you initiated it in Teams or over in SharePoint, you'll be able to have a single view of everything that you've created or that you've been invited to utilize. So that is my soapbox on Microsoft Lists adoption. Any
So Christian,
questions? Yes.
One of the things I've enjoyed about the Power Automate / Flow story the most is that I get people out in the business that are not technologists coming to me and saying, okay, I created this flow to do this thing, and I have this question problem. And I love the idea that we've got this citizen-led development where they don't even call us. They just go out and get going on it. Knowing that AvePoint isn't the typical business environment, can you see the same thing happening with lists?
Yeah, I mean, yes, exactly. I think that home page it works as a discovery page as well. So if you have lists that are publicly available in your organization, and eventually when we have, make them accessible, have some externally viewable sites and things, but as everything that is SharePoint at its, as part of its infrastructure, is permission based. So you should, if you create a list and have it open to the entire organization, that everybody should be able to go in and discover and find that resource. So is that kind of your question? I mean, so anybody could go in if you have it set up. Yes, anybody can go in and create a list. Anybody.
So if I'm a non-technical user, though, is there something here in this adoption set of resources that will teach me how to stand up a list and do it right and have it be secure and how to share it and all those types of things, so that somebody that isn't can go and create one of these?
Well, everyone aspires to be a Kip Sorensen, but all of us can't be. Maybe 3 or 4 of us could, and then kill him off and take his place. But having said that, so yeah, the training stuff materials, it goes through the advanced capabilities, but it is one thing they've done a really good job of is the getting started. You go into the list app. If you've not taken the time to go in and explore with that, obviously it has to be enabled through the admin, turned on and available for your tenant. But go into Teams, go into the list app, get it started, and it starts you off. It walks you through the templates. And so it gives you, before you go and create things from scratch, start by taking a look at the out-of-the-box templates and making some tweaks and modifications to it. So it should be pretty self-evident. Obviously, if you can use Excel, the basic features in Excel, you can use lists which I think is, kind of an in-between. It is SharePoint, but it's kind of an in-between to what is generally done over on the SharePoint side. So it's meant to be an end user, not an IT pro solution. Yeah, then if you have, again, I would go through some of the training materials. There's tons of content already from the community and from Microsoft on how to go and build your first list. So you can go out to YouTube and find tons of stuff. Are there good ones and bad ones out there? I don't know. I'm not spending any time looking for those, but I know that there are a few that are already out there. You have people like Vlad. I mean, how much can you trust Vlad's content?
Really?
Mark Cashman. I don't know. Yeah, you got to weigh the risks of doing something that was, guidance provided by Microsoft's Mark Cashman. Life is a risk.
Speaking of risks, any other questions for Mr. Buckley?
That's all I have for my stand-up for today. So
besides being pressured, Christian, what made you choose lists as kind of one of your top things from Ignite?
This wasn't, see, it came up in the conversation. It's not from Ignite. It happened independently. So this is one of those things, again, if I had Kip out of the way and ruled the world, I would be out singing the praises of lists regardless of. No, I know that there was more content around lists and things that are out there. But since that blog post, again, I think it was Mark that did the blog post or did the mention of it. And I've not seen anybody talking about it. And so I keep bringing it up because I think it's a fantastic resource that they've provided that's out there. And so I would force this in front of or into the face of all of my end users. I've been pushing it internally with that point as well. So,
well, and the nice thing is they didn't call it SharePoint Lite.
Yeah. Well, I just use it because somebody made the mistake of me being big on lists, and they sent out some very complex Excel spreadsheet, and I was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" So it was a teaching moment.
Yeah.
Can I add to your pitch, Christian?
Oh wait, Kip is here. Oh my gosh!
Stop, you guys. I don't know if I need to convince anybody else of lists, but I think it's a really critical point. And the point is it has a built-in interface for managing the data. So if you're I would even argue that if you're going to build a Power App for processing a form, that you shouldn't store that in the Dataverse, because then what do you have to do? You have to build an interface in Power Apps to manage the records that get submitted. Like, that is reinventing the wheel. So unless it requires an entity that's tied to, Dynamics, or there's some other means, and we're talking about business process to accept some data, process, and do something with the request, the correct answer is store it in a list. Otherwise, you have to build an interface for managing the record. It's a waste of time if you're not using lists, and you're an idiot if you're not.
You know what's funny though? Like, see, so I completely agree with that. But there are some folks, like, had a conversation with, I won't name any names, Mark Anderson, but that where we were talking about, so back in the day, I used to sing the praises of SharePoint lists and how I use lists more than I use libraries of things. Like, I add the data straight in there. But that crowd has largely gone into the Power Platform, and now they're overthinking some of these solutions rather than, hey, use the capability that's out of the box. So I had a conversation, wasn't actually with Mark, I just threw his name out there, but somebody on his team that used to, again, sing the praises of SharePoint lists and not overcomplicating a solution that are with the Power Platform overcomplicating the solutions. Microsoft knows that there's a slightly above just an Office user, of the desktop app user that is, again, not IT pro, that needs to go and build a little more complexity in their solution and share it out within their organization. That's what lists is designed for.
Well, and even if I am somebody blessed with Kip's skills as a developer, or Greg,
you aren't, Kevin, but I'll just point that out, but
if I were, that's a big,
imaginary world of yours, yes.
One day.
it's a big if. There still might be times when I don't want the overhead of creating that custom app, and it's just for that that array of things where I just need a simple get it done app. This is a great way to do it.
I had another thought, and maybe this isn't a good parallel, but for those that ever had to help move an organization off of Lotus Notes over to the Microsoft world. And one of the things, remember when Access Services was announced? And we always knew it's an apples versus oranges. It's not like you can map and just migrate over, but it was like services. It was the ability to go in and very quickly, what's powerful about Lotus Notes, or was, all the bad things about it and the horrific user interface, blah, blah, blah. But you could create very quick and simple data-driven applications. You go in a typical organization that had been using Lotus Notes for 5-10 years, and there might be tens of thousands of those apps in use, in production. And so the benefits here, of course, is that the data is more portable. Microsoft hasn't gone and locked you in like that, but you have this similar capability where anybody can go in, any skill level, and get productivity out of it and find function out of it, and doing these small data-driven solutions. I don't need to go learn Power Apps. I've got lists. I could do the rest of it, and then I ask somebody in IT to build it, or pay Kip way too much money to come in and build it for me.
But you do get to work with Kip in that case.
That's
all right.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So speaking of Kip, our next presenter is Greg. Greg is going to walk us through Power Automate Desktop, which was, I believe, an Ignite announcement. And so Greg at least is on point and on topic. And I'm excited about it. So Greg, the microphone is yours, so to speak.
All right. I'm going to share my screen here. If I can share the right one. All right, here we go. So Power Automate Desktop. What did I like about this? I liked, first of all, that it's something they've talked about for a little while. So what is this? It's robotic process automation. So this is, similar to Flows or Power Automate that runs, headless in the cloud. This is for your desktop. This is for automating applications that you have that you want to do, the same sort of task on. So think about, the person who gets to their computer in the morning, they open up their inbox, there's a spreadsheet waiting for them to open up and do something to, they do whatever it is, they copy the values out, they paste them into a new email and send it out, or maybe a slide deck, or whatever it is they do. This helps just do a lot of those really common steps. And they announced that it's in preview now, so anyone can install it and use it. And the other thing that they announced that was awesome is that it is free for any Windows 10 user. So this is not tied to an enterprise license. This is not, some premium license you've got to go buy to do it. You just download and install it, and away you go. There are a couple of gotchas there to be aware of. One is that it does require you to have a Flow account. So if your organization has decided to block Power Automate at your tenant level and prevent you from signing up with an account there, it will not work. And the reason for that is it actually stores these flows out there. You also have to, or the other thing with the caveat with the licensing is there are some features that are still hidden behind a premium license. So you can see up here at the task, or at the top of the bar, there's a Go Premium button with a diamond. I guess that's how much it costs. They no longer accept currency, they require gemstones. But there are a few things. I think the most interesting of those is if you wanted to run this without you interacting with it. So in other words, if you want to be able to have this run automatically at 6 a.m., whether or not you're logged into your computer, that requires a premium license. If you don't mind waiting until you log in and you click the play button to run it, you can run the free version, no problem. There are a couple of other premium pieces, like if you want to use AI Builder or some other technology that you can connect in, but there is a ton of stuff that's available for free. So the fact that they're just giving it away for Windows 10 licensed users is pretty awesome, even though it's part of kind of the greater Office and Power Platform family. So that's the background into what I like. But enough of me just talking. Let's actually look at what this is. So I built a sample flow here for this meeting, and I'm going to click the edit button to go look at it. And it will take a little while as it launches the editor for it. And we can see here that I have created a flow that does a few things. So one of the things that I really like is it has an OCR engine. It actually has a couple of different OCR engines, but what it does is that will do optical character recognition. So I'm starting to see this pop up in more and more places, but it's really handy to be able to take an image and grab the text from inside it and copy and paste that somewhere else. And so I downloaded a picture that I really like. Here, I'm going to open it up so we can all see it. It's an inspirational quote. And it says, in essentials, unity, in non-essentials, liberty, and in all things, charity. So I think it's a great quote. It inspires me. And I probably want to like copy and paste that into the team chat today or something like that. So I've configured this, and I'm going to actually set a breakpoint right here to stop this flow at this point. And so if I hit run, it's going to start doing all of these steps. And it's telling me it's running. You can see the blue bar where it's at. And if we look over here, I have a variable that actually copied that, into that in-memory variable, as well as I set the clipboard text. So I could go and, paste that into the team chat now or wherever. I'll just bring up my little handy dandy run window and you can see the text is there. It does its best that it can. It's obviously doing some funny stuff with the line break in this single line text box. So, your results may vary. There's not a lot you can do configuration wise to kind of adjust it, but to have that power available is really cool. So I'm going to stop this for a second. But what the rest of this flow does is it would actually open up my start menu, launch Word, and pick the blank document and do paste. So rather than show that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this and we're going to create a new flow. I'm going to call it launch blank document. And if we look in here, there's a bunch of different actions. So if I want to search these, Word doesn't get me anywhere. Office does, no. App, here we go, run application. So I can just drag and drop that over here. And it says, hey, what do you want to run? And I'll have to actually look up the path to Word if I wanted it to run. Or what I can do is say, you know what, that's too cumbersome. I liked the good old days when in Excel, I could just record a macro and life was so much better. Well, the good news is we can still do that. So there's two buttons up here. One is a web recorder. And so when you're installing the Power Automate desktop, you can optionally install some browser plugins that let you automate your web browser. It's using the same Selenium test framework that a lot of developers will use that automate all aspects of a web page for testing purposes. And so you can do some pretty amazing stuff with the web recorder, or you can hit this button for the desktop recorder, which is what I'm going to do. And so when I hit that, it just shows me this screen that it's now recording. And as soon as I start doing stuff, like I hit my Windows key and I start typing, launch Word.
We're seeing your
Oh, I gotta,
log screen.
yeah, I got to hit start recording because I'm an idiot. Let's see here if it behaves now. Joys of trying to do a demo live.
It wouldn't be a demo if it didn't have a glitch.
That's right. And something is eating up all of my CPU resources. Stand by, as the mouse is jumping around.
Greg, you didn't pay the demo gods.
I didn't. Oh, and look at that. It even crashed for me. So isn't that nice? So let's try again. And as much as you want to stare at my login screen here, we'll just put that background up. Start recording. Start menu. Word. Oh, look at that. No, it grabbed something else from Slack. Isn't that nice? And, oh, there we go. So here's Word with a blank document. And you can see, resizing the window. I accidentally clicked on some stuff here, but it's recording all of this stuff. So if I click on like the view ribbon and I do side by side, you can see every element I'm clicking in there, it's recording over here. So I'm just going to hit finish so we can see this having done its thing without being overly interesting. And what yeah, Slack, we didn't really need you coming in here. We're Teams fans, so we're going to get rid of that weirdness. But it's saying, hey, in my start menu, click on Word, then I clicked on the ribbon, I did all these things. If I wanted to automate that, I'm done. So the last thing I wanted to cover just quickly is over here on the left, these actions. There are, from what I've read, over 400 actions that are available out of the box. And they include a lot of things like, Excel, if I want to launch Excel or attach to a running version, save, as well as all of the interactions that you saw me doing inside of Word, those are available in Excel as well. The web automation, I didn't talk too much about, but you can fill forms, you can extract data from the web, lots of good stuff. You need to be able to zip up a bunch of folders and files, you can do that, or unzip them. If you want to be able to transfer them, to a secure FTP server, that's listed here as well. You can upload the files, download them, whatever you need to do. Cryptography, there is a ton of stuff that's in here that is, very robust as far as, what it's capable of doing. So it's free to use. I'd encourage everybody to download it, see what it can do to help you out. Questions?
Can you share one of these automation scripts with another user?
Yes, because they're just flows. So if you log into Power Automate's web portal, so flow.microsoft.com, you can see them listed there. So
you can use the same share that you would do with the regular web-based flow.
exactly.
Can you run these from the web?
You have to, I believe you have to have the desktop client installed.
Okay.
So you should, if you share it and somebody can get it loaded, I think they have to like clone it or somehow import it into their collection. I've never actually tried it, so I don't know for sure. But in theory, they should be able to pull it into their Power Automate desktop and run it themselves.
So, and if you have the premium Power Automate, you can have it run on your desktop on a timer. I assume that means that your machine has to be awake and running when it's supposed to kick off and go. Are there any other trigger conditions other than that in manual?
I don't know. That is a great question, Kevin. I look forward to you telling us next month the answer.
It's always good to have hope.
So, Greg, I was curious about environments. got desktop when it first came out. And then, oops, sorry. And then I knew Kev was going to get me. And then I hadn't used it for 2 or 3 weeks, and then I came back in and tried, because I was kind of curious about the Process Advisor, and then I had to go clear into Power Apps to reacquire my environments, and desktop wants to get to an environment, but it won't take up any of the other Power Platform environments, but the default. Have you played with that? Have you had that occur with you?
No, but what you're describing makes sense. Last week when we're talking about this, I installed it, and it was during the Azure outage, and nothing was working for me. I couldn't provision a new environment. I couldn't do anything to make it work. And then, I waited a couple of days, and suddenly everything worked beautifully. But it is all associated with the default environment. So I don't know if there's a way to change that or not. I would kind of expect no, but maybe.
Yeah. Well, we're using flows with lists and having good success with that. I've been working towards a way of having a user list in Teams for our clients to be able to create a request for a new user, and then it creates uses a flow to email that. Now we're, instead of emailing just an HTML, we're actually having it create a CSV, and then we're getting ready to use the CSV to create the user, and with PowerShell scripts, grab licensing from our from Ingram Micro. So we're getting there. We're playing with
you
it.
guys are getting pretty advanced. And so, one of the things I think about in terms of all of that, Rusty, is Microsoft is trying very hard to cater to a broad spectrum of, we'll call them modern developers. So whether that's a citizen developer or a diehard, staring at text on a screen, kind of traditional dev, or, somebody that is more like writing an Excel macro kind of thing. I think they're trying to have solutions available for all of those different parties. And I think one of the hard things is a lot of those solutions overlap. And so it's not always clear what the best or right choice might be in how to approach, any one of these problems. Because you could probably do what you're describing a dozen different ways or more and get a similar result.
Sure. Well, I've been using desktop to play with. Every month we have our client want a list of their users in 365 and their licenses. So before, we were manually going into the active users, exporting it to to a CSV, importing, opening it up in Excel, converting it to an Excel spreadsheet, and then cleaning it up, prettying it up a little bit, and then saving it into what we call our extranet, which is just a SharePoint site that we have folders that are shared to that contact, and doing that. And I have a flow. I used desktop to do all those steps.
Yeah, and what a great time saver for you is you hit play and you go refill your morning beverage, and you come back, and hopefully that work's done for you, right?
It's done. It's the thing that it's all about automation. But I am thinking the citizen developer is us. It's not the typical user that you see sitting behind a desk.
I don't know. We've had, I think, a lot of interest in that citizen developer being somebody in the business sitting behind a desk. I got an email just yesterday from an intern in finance saying, "Hey, I'm playing with Power Automate. I think this is going to work. Can I get a little help?" And so we're seeing that as people find that their drudgery can be automated as well.
Well, I'm hoping this desktop thing, because I'm going to be championing that.
So maybe instead of Kevin telling us all the ins and outs of Power Automate Desktop, we get Rusty to present in a month or two.
Yep.
I think we figured it out here. Plus, being able to actually showcase what people are doing in the real world, there is nothing better.
Yeah. Where the rubber meets the road. Any other questions for Mr. McMurray?
Hey, Greg, real quick, what was the Tesseract that was mentioned in that recipe? That I'm not familiar with Tesseract.
It's just one of the optical character recognition libraries. It's an open source one. I think it's probably one of the most popular, if not the most popular, just because it's relatively simple to use and does a good job.
Well,
Thank you.
it says
There's no infinity stone inside it. You're not going to get, unrealistic powers.
We're all looking for those Thor powers.
Yeah, but it's just a name. If you go search on like GitHub for Tesseract OCR, you'll find it.
All right. And Kip has pointed out that he has a working copy of topics running on his tenant. Of course he does. We'll decide if we want him to show that off or not. Do you have anything else for us, Greg?
No, I'm good. Did Noah finally join?
I don't think so. And in his defense, he never said for sure that he was going to come. That was just me trying to bend his arm. And so we'll move on. And I'm going to share. I've done even less of a demo than Greg. Mine is entirely talkie-talkie.
I do have an AltSpace VR question. So I downloaded and installed it. What's the recommended, like the headset, the gear, the other stuff? Has anybody gone out and purchased any recommendations there?
That is so a Noah question.
So what I would say, Christian, is on the market today, the best bang for your buck is the Oculus Quest 2. If you have no qualms with Facebook and what they might or might not do with any data.
What's the Microsoft? Is it HoloLens is what Microsoft is pitching?
Well, they've got HoloLens, and then they've also got there's another one for their VR stuff, like the Samsung HMD or the Odyssey, that's what they called it. And then there was another one, I think, from like HTC or somebody, but I think those are starting to kind of fall by the wayside in favor of like the Vive. Valve has something, and Oculus are kind of the big boys.
What was the name of that the device again?
Oculus Quest 2.
And money is no object to Christian, so he'll just go out and buy a dozen and see what they do.
Of course. Well, you have the one that you keep in the box, one that you use, and one for display.
Yeah. All right. So the last topic that we had was Microsoft Viva, following which we'll have kind of a free-for-all. If anybody else actually attended any Ignite session, we can talk about that. Viva is, when Microsoft pitches it, they talk about Viva as the answer to the new remote workforce. And we've all been remote for a year, and we all have experienced the joy and the disconnectedness of being a remote workforce, and Microsoft has noticed that. This is their response. It has 4 parts. We're going to talk about briefly all 4: connections, insights, learning, and topics. The introduction video was from Microsoft Chuck Friedman, whom I don't know if I've ever heard of before now, but he had 2 pretty good quotes that I thought were worth sharing. What is needed to survive and thrive is a new culture of connection. I had a buddy that talks all the time about how culture eats policy for breakfast, and it's absolutely true. The culture that we have in our companies is what's going to drive our companies and what will determine how our companies perform. And then the other thing he said is we need to stop thinking of work as a place and start thinking of it as a culture, and that's so true as well. I was talking to somebody else today at lunch about their company, and prior to COVID, their company had always said, no, we're working in the office. We'll build as many desks as we need. We all need to be in the same place at the same time working. And when COVID hit and we all ran home to work and they saw productivity increase, they said, oh, wait, maybe you guys were right. Maybe there is something to working at home and not coming into the office every day. And that comes from the idea that work is our culture. It's what we do together. It's the output of our efforts, not where we happen to be at any given moment. And so Viva is intended to make those two realities work so that we can have something that drives culture and we can make ourselves be more productive wherever we happen to be working. So the first is connections. And on every slide, I think I've got a bullet called the Gospel of Kev. And this is just my spin on it or my read on each of these individual parts. And so connections, I think, used to be a home site. And I don't think it changed much other than the title from what they used to pitch to us as home site. And I've got to be honest, I was pretty excited about home site when they showed it off in the 2020 Ignite. And here we are. Was it the 2020 or the 2019? Anyway, a long time ago, they said, hey, we've got this great home site thing. Go home and use it. It'll be delivered in January. And here we are, another January away.
I think that was 2015. I think it was the last in person.
Yeah. And I came home and dutifully went to my corp comms people and said, hey, there's this great thing called home site. Let's turn it on in January. And they said, Kev, we believe you. Let's do it. We'll go. And January came and it didn't deliver in February, March, and April. And here we are in the second March. And now we're calling it Connections. And they say it's going to be delivered in the first half of 2021, which if my math is correct, would put it 19 months late. But still, it could be cool. It's going to integrate into Teams, just like HomeSite would. It'll integrate into Yammer if anybody's actually using Yammer. It has the opportunity, I think, to be a really cool tool that we can use to help our employees know what's going on. Where I work, we're a big multinational. We're in 50 plus countries. And so we have 50 plus audiences that want information specific to them. And so it has to be translatable and it has to have a translation workflow. And best case, it's going to have machine learning translation. And so we just look at it and correct it, which hasn't been delivered yet. It's got to be audience targetable so that the guys in Brussels don't see the HR package for the guys in Thailand. It's got to do all of those things. And I think that HomeSite, Connections will do it when it is finally delivered. So that's part one of Viva. Any questions about that one, sir?
So tell me, I'm going to put my hand down here. So tell me, what's the difference between this and my intranet that I've just been building for the last decade?
Branding, essentially. HomeSite has a few features, and Kip, as the acknowledged SharePoint ninja, when I go astray, feel free to correct me. I'm used to it. It happens everywhere, both at work and at home. An intranet and a home site are about the same. I think a home site is more along the lines of they've taken the best pieces of the internet and prepackaged them so that you can roll them out with a button push and you get all of that stuff you spent 20 years developing, not necessarily for free, but in a bundle. And so you've got the My Newsfeed widget, you've got the hero, you've got the stuff that they think are best practices out of the box, ready to go.
And that was driven more, again, I'm just kind of stuff that I think, and part of it an actual question, but because they, with such a push around Teams and Microsoft making Teams a major aspect of their, of the next, at least 5 to 10 years that of their primary focus. And a key to that, you could always say, like, what are partners measured on? And there are two for all Microsoft partners. 2 of the 3 most important metrics are Teams metrics.
Yes.
And so it's Teams, MAU, Teams is the platform, and Azure consumption. And Teams MAU is, of course, monthly active users, number of people on there. And Teams as a platform is a measurement of usage. It's a way to measure, like, if people are using apps on there, they can measure that activity, and people that are using apps inside of Teams are most likely more highly engaged right. Teams owners. But
we're going to talk about that in my summary slide.
Okay, but with all of the emphasis being moved to Teams, is it just that Microsoft realized we're making all these investments in the home sites over on SharePoint, but now we're going to have less people visiting just SharePoint standalone because they're all over in Teams. Therefore, let's move the intranet over to Teams. Is that kind of what happened and the reason for the delay in your estimation?
I can't know. I do know that when they announced it in 2019, that last time that we all got to breathe the same air in Orlando, that they did say that you'd be able to surface that home site in a Teams tab. And so you could do it even from the get-go. And so I think that, as is often the case, our eyes were bigger than our bellies in terms of what we could deliver. And in this case, I'm saying we in the Microsoft we. And you say, I just had it in a meeting today, a business user said, well, it seems like it's a fairly simple workflow. Let's just pick it up and move it. And my developer, of course, is choking on his lunch because it isn't a very simple, it just looks to be simple, right? And it looks to be simple to take this prepackaged 20 years of internet stuff and deliver it as a home site. And once they got to putting it through test and making it be scalable and secure, they found out that there's snake in the grass. And so it took longer. And I'm all about it.
Yeah.
Let's deliver it. Let's deliver when it's right and secure and scalable and reliable and not delivered on time.
Well, you've always been able to do, a SharePoint site as tab or and even have the fully functional, it's more robust than just passing a website over there, but you could always do that for a home page. And this is not that. This is more robust. It's the personalized experience. And there's a lot more that you can go and do. So it's, but it's,
it seems simple, but I don't think it was.
Right.
Is essentially what we're saying.
Right.
Okay. So let's go ahead.
I was going to say, just the good thing to know is whatever your intranet is today, you can classify that as a home site, which really just changes some navigational elements in your 365 tenant and for like SharePoint on your mobile app. And that can and will be able to be this within Teams. So it doesn't matter if you're using a hub or if you have a full-blown intranet. The play is that could be ported into Teams when this is available.
Yeah.
And you can have as many home sites as you want, up to one.
Right.
Yeah, one home site. Yeah, which
all
is
the way
your port.
that rolls up to the one. Yes.
Yeah. And the navigational bar is independent of connections. So that's rolling out as a SharePoint feature, nonetheless. The one that still hasn't come yet.
Okay. Okay, so that's connections. Number 2 is insights. And insights used to be, I think, called your Cortana daily briefing. In the summary, they actually referred back to that, and so they're not trying to hide the fact that this used to be your Cortana daily briefing. It's supposed to be out later this quarter, which is kind of odd because I've been getting it for 6 months now. I was interested in that it says it's able to use data from Glint, Zoom, Workday, and SAP, which tells me that if you're willing to do the hard work to build connections to those devices, and again, this is one of those things that it's easy to say we'll take Glint content, but given the sensitive nature of Glint content, I'm sure there are lots and lots of snakes in those security grasses that you want to be aware of, but it's built in, and so they can do that. They did mention that coming this spring, virtual commutes, and I'm not showing a fancy background, and so that door there is my sleeping quarters, and my commute is from there to here. And of all of the work from home bits that I enjoy, that's the one I enjoy the most. And so I can't imagine why I'd want to turn that into a 30-minute virtual commute. But if that works for you, soon you'll be able to. Anybody have any idea why you'd want a virtual commute? Catch up on your podcast movie? I don't know. It does say, when I just went back a slide, it does say that it's going to require an organizational insight subscription. I don't know what that means. Couldn't figure that out. I suspect that means that you write a slightly bigger check to Microsoft every month, but I'm not sure.
I was just going to add that I do a virtual commute sometimes. It's where I lean my chair back a little bit. I have a bunch of food that I drop down the front of me, and I listen to CDs rather than streaming. So that's my virtual commute.
Do you occasionally yell at other virtual commuters and say, "Get out of my lane"?
And give them the one finger salute. You betcha.
Yeah. All right. Learning. This is one that of the 4, this is the one, and I will highlight this. I don't know if I can, but right here where it says Gospel of Kev, this may be mostly new. This is the one of the 4 that I'm actually legitimately excited about. It does a number of things that I think are desperately needed in our modern workplace and be unique. And this kind of goes to the statement you made earlier, Christian, that for Microsoft, Teams is job 1, 2, and 3 for the next 5 years. And so this app lives in Teams. I don't know that you can get to this app anywhere but in Teams as they've described it. And so this is a Teams only kind of thing. And it will allow you as a manager to assign learning tracks, not just classes, but learning tracks to your employees and get feedback as they go through that. And you can then use this application to give those same employees badges and awards and recognition and be able to know who has got what competency based on the things that they have done. And I'm super excited about that. I think if Microsoft pulls this off, learning will be a really cool bit of Viva that I am happy to pay extra for. I could find no evidence of what it's going to cost to use the learning part of Viva. I suspect there will be a small stipend paid to the Bill Gates Memorial Fund, but I don't know. The other thing that I'm excited about is the third-party integrations, and I listed out the ones that they talked about in the Ignite sessions. LinkedIn Learning is a big one. Microsoft Learn is a big one. If you have a Microsoft Unified Support contract, you already have that through the Services Hub, but the idea that you can surface that up in Teams is big. And the idea that they've got partnerships with people like Skillsoft and Pluralsoft is phenomenal. I'm super excited about the idea that I could go out to employees and say, okay, you're a junior developer, and I want you to be a Josh Cook or a even better Kip Sorensen version of a developer. And so go complete these 3 learning tracks and be able to see their progress through those learning tracks and be able to use that as a metric and a number that has value, I think is huge. And so I'm really excited about that. It also has the ability to surface up personal recommendations based on graph data. And so it can look at the projects you're working on, the emails that you're sending, the text messages that you're sending, and say, hey, it looks like you're working on this. Can I offer up a course for you from one of my recognized sources? Public preview, it said coming out next month, which is the same thing I heard when I first heard about the new learning app last year in April. And so we'll see what next month actually turns out to be. And then cost is $, not a number, because I can't find any evidence of what it's going to cost to do this. But of the 4, this is the one that I am really excited about, and I think could add a lot of value to a lot of organizations. Any comments, thoughts, questions?
Yeah, most speculation is that the app itself will be free. And then, so if you have your internal training materials and stuff that you'll be able to surface through that, but obviously any of the third party, the other LinkedIn Learning and other resources, you'll have to pay for that. But that's the current thinking, but we don't know.
And we don't know if you're going to pay for each connection. So you pay $1,000 to connect to LinkedIn for any number of employees, or if it's going to be $2 per employee that connects to LinkedIn. I suspect it's the latter, but right now it's not a number.
But a lot of organizations, I mean, so a lot of the edX stuff, for example, is free that's out there. There's tons of content and resources that'll be free that you'll be able to surface through this and go and build, learning pathways, just like you were doing, maybe using learning pathways, but that you could go and surface, or internal content. And a lot of larger organizations already subscribe to one or more of these services for that content. And so you'll be able to, you're not having to, again, not yet fully known, but the thinking is that if you're already paying for that, you're not going to pay anything in addition to centralize it and build the programs or learning pathways through this tool.
And to tie it all into a ribbon, perhaps, when they talked about insights, one of the things that they talked about that is that insights can tell you when you are busy and say, hey, do you want to set aside some time for training? And so the one feeds into the other, and you can use insight to say, I'm going to set aside these blocks of time in the next week to go sit in Teams and learn something using Microsoft Learnings. So they talked in insights about how people are feeling burned out. This also is something that I think we see in the Cortana daily hints thing, because I know that the rest of you are getting those hints that say, it looks like you've got a lot of meetings this week. Do you want to set aside some time for focus? And I'm like, focus? What am I going to focus on? It's meetings. That's what I do. I go to meetings. I'm the meeting man. That's where I had my, anyway. So I think this is, again, an enhancement of that. The preview is supposed to come out later this quarter. Maybe it's not Cortana Daily Briefing, but it's Insights or Cortana Insights. It's been around. It's now part of the Viva family. Again, it'll be able to use data from Glint, Zoom, Workday, and SAP if you pay to connect those. And again, I think those connections are probably going to be non-trivial, but maybe that's me being a cynic. Sir, yes, sir.
Yeah, one of the issues I think is that there's they're still not don't have answers for the multi-tenant issue. So one of the problems that I have with a lot of like the analytics and the Cortana stuff is it comes in and said, you had 70% of your time free. I'm like, the heck I did. I was like, so I'm managing across multiple tenants and multiple calendars. I've got views in, but it's not pulling the data except from the core of the primary system. And so
if the two tenants don't know each other, how do you get content from both of them without putting everything in both tenants? That's a very tough question. Yeah.
So there needs to be, and again, the multi-tenancy issues in a number of different areas, not just this one. I know that Microsoft is looking at some multi-tenancy issues. I'm not sure what is being looked at or what's in the roadmap, official or unofficial, on this, but it's for those that have the multi-tenant problem, like this will be a lackluster adoption issue for me for these tools because of that.
Because the value of the insights that are incorrect is pretty low.
Yeah.
All right, and the aforementioned summary. Oh, wait, there's learning topics. I went backwards, not forwards. Topics is automatically surfaced cards with information on them. It uses AI magic to go and figure out what is going on in your organization, what acronyms mean, things like that. Gospel of Kev, this is Project Cortex. They, in fact, even had Naomi do all of the talkie about it at Ignite. And so this is Project Cortex. This is one of the few where I have solid numbers on what it's going to cost, and that is $5 per person, in addition to your traditional Office 365 licensing costs, minus whatever discounts you're able to wrangle out of Microsoft. So even in the case where there's a good solid dollar figure, there isn't.
Has anybody done a deployment? Kip, have you guys been involved and done some deployments?
Yeah. Through our testing, we've confirmed it's $5 for the administrator of the topic center. Consumption of the topics doesn't require additional licensing.
That's
now, I don't know
what it says in their official documentation.
Yeah, and that's why I said it the way I said it. Based upon our testing, you can consume the topic center without additional licensing.
And I love Microsoft as well as the rest of you, but one of the things that they're famous for is letting you hang yourself.
Yeah.
And so I would be very careful about saying that because I can do it means that I should do it, because there's always that end of the year audit.
Right.
Yeah.
Or Microsoft is going to say, by the way.
Yeah, but one of the things though that some people were surprised, it was good to hear. There was some speculation that you had to have an E5 to be able to utilize it, and it's a much broader set of SKUs that are able to use this.
Right.
Yeah.
Which was good.
I think an important note. Yeah, so Viva Topics of what they demo, right? The topic cards, getting prompts within email, within Teams, as well as the topic center being available in the Teams client, that is not available yet. So what's available to us today is the deployment of the topic center through a SharePoint interface and the serving up of topics via search. That is it. There are no built-in IntelliSense in your email or even SharePoint for that matter. But if you do a search and you have alternate names for a given topic, it will give you an interactive card within the search results, and you can navigate to those suggested topic pages.
That was the question was always going to be like, what is the administrative overhead for going and building this? I mean, it just seems, you tell me any different, Kip, but having deployed it, it's very reliant. Like it's great for structured collaboration environments where you have an intake form where the data looks the same. Yes, it's supposed to learn. Yes, there's supposed to be intelligence around that, but it's not for ad hoc collaboration and that it will automagically go in and look at whatever documents and files that you pump in there and magically sort them out. It has to have the template. You have to build that intelligence around that form. So if you work in like an insurance office, a doctor's office, and the same form coming in that's filled out, that's what it's designed for more than ad hoc.
Yeah. So what you're mentioning, Christian, I think is more in line with syntax. And so syntax requires that modeling, right? And consistency in regards to the extraction of that data. Topics, on the other hand, we literally turn it on and let it go. And it starts generating topics on the fly. So if I go do a search for probably a client name right now in our search, there's a topic page.
So that's as accurate as like Wikipedia.
Yeah, in fact, not only that, yeah, it will actually pull in data from Wikipedia for a definition that's common. Yeah. So if you have common terms like an estimate of work, you'll actually go to Wikipedia, grab that extraction, and put that into the summary of the topic page. I actually think, and I used to think, and I'm still on the fence in regards to how I see topics rolling out. But when I first heard about Cortex, what I thought is Microsoft's going to build a knowledge base, and we're going to compete with Oracle and other tooling in the industry. And I really thought these topic pages were those knowledge base articles. And I actually now have seen the light differently, and I take it completely back. I think the play is that, well, it's we've already seen. I had a client the other day ask for, hey, where's best bets and keywords? And my response was, don't worry about that. Let's deploy topic centers. And you can go in and create a topic center instead of a keyword, for instance. And the artificial intelligence is going to go find all the related documents and people related based upon the keyword that you added as a topic. And then you can build relationships between topics. So it's not the source of data, it's not the article, it's not the knowledge, it's the in-between that then points you to all the other related topics that are kind of geared towards it. And that's kind of what the deployment of the topic center is starting to look like right now, is almost like a company glossary, if you want to use that term, that's intelligent to be able to point you to the related information within your ecosystem.
I also like the idea that they talked about you can ask questions, and with topics up and running, when somebody answers that question, that then becomes the authoritative answer that gets surfaced up next time if that person is recognized as an expert in that topic area.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's web parts that will even ask. So if I go to the topic center right now, they'll say, hey, here's some new suggestions. Should you be a point of contact for this given topic? Should anyone else be, right? And so there's a lot of socialization or kind of socialization around curating the content within the topic center.
I was gonna say, Kip, one of these days I'll have to tell you the story of my first startup, because the one that I sold to Rational Software, because we built something very similar to this a long time ago.
If you had done it right, Christian.
Oh, I know. Oh, I know. But that's kind of how I found myself a couple years later in the SharePoint space. It was that experience, and I wrote a white paper. That was like 18 years ago, wrote that white paper, which got the attention of some Microsoft people who said, you should come up and take a look at what we're doing with SharePoint. Right. And then I saw it, that was in 2004, and said, boy, this is garbage. And then showed them some of what I was working on in the PLM space, which was much more expensive, but highly functional collaboration technology. But I caught the SharePoint bug, so. Yeah. Anyway.
And then here's the summary screen that I promised. I think that all of this stuff is evolutionary, not necessarily revolutionary. As much as I liked the learning bit, this is all a small step forward. And I think that calling it Viva and pretending that it's one product is. And then to your original point, Christian, Teams does seem to be the focus, but they are admitting that Yammer does still exist, SharePoint does still exist, and believe it or not, people still use Outlook occasionally. And then the last thing I have is that licensing on all of this is murky. What we have today may change, and just based on what I've heard, read, and experienced, the fact that KIP can run it with one license for the administrator and everybody else free, I would be hesitant to deploy that same model in a working live environment, just because that may not be what your license agreement says you should be doing. Any other questions?
It's another case of one of those KIP gets the special pricing, but nobody else. So
well, so KIP, being the Iron Man, might be willing to live dangerously, and the rest of us who are not Iron Man, we might want to play within the rules, so to speak.
Well, I think this is another example, like Azure P2 pricing, where you just need one of those licenses to enable a bunch of security features. You know, where, yeah, I think Microsoft would rather you license it broadly, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're okay saying, all right, you've got 5 or 50 topic admins, just license them, the rest is fine.
And then in 2 years they'll change the
price. And then
price.
in 2 years they change the prices.
It's not the 2-year change the pricing that makes me wake up at night with cold sweats. It's the audit that says, okay, you've got 5,000 users that you've been using for 11 months. And now that it's time for your true up, I want 55 times 5,000 times 11, whatever that is. That's a lot of money. That's the thing that made me have a cold sweat, is the idea that they could. And we love Microsoft and have a great relationship with our licensing team, but that could always change. So just, unless you're KIP, be careful.
And the disclosure, none of us are licensing experts. You know, contact your partner.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any Ignite topics that we want to talk about? We're at 75 minutes, and so I'm okay if not. But if there's something you're dying to tell us about, we're all ears.
I joined a little late. Did you guys cover it all secure channels? Was there any discussion on that?
No.
What are your thoughts on that? You know, secure channel versus private channel. I wasn't a big fan of private channel. Kind of avoided that at like the plague, just because it creates another site and all the security nightmares and functionality not working. But secure channel seems a little interesting to me. So being able to share content, you know, with external guests and, you know, within your team, but not giving them the, you know, access to everything. So just curious if anybody has any thoughts on that.
I don't yet. I mean, you know, Pablo, I mean, we've had this conversation around private channels. Like the concept from Ignite, or when they first announced it, I was on board until I saw how it worked, right? So I'm a little hesitant on the secure channel, because I'm like, oh, great concept. Let's see what it does on the back end, right? So it still makes me a little, you know, a little concerned from that perspective. But
is that a fool me once kind of thing?
What's that?
Is that a fool me once kind of thing?
Yeah. George Bush quote. Yeah.
So I guess, Pablo, we can say that the jury's still out and none of us have any real information for you.
Okay.
Yeah. So for the benefit of anyone on the line, you know, where would you use a regular Teams channel versus a private channel versus a secure? Like what are the use cases Microsoft would say, this is when you use that?
Oh, when you use them. I thought you said where, and I was like, well, I'd use all of them in the office, Greg. What question is that?
I was thinking with secure channel, you know, to leverage that for guest users, and, you know, like you have internal content that you want to keep within your team that's, you know, you want to keep it private, but a secure channel, you could extend that out, you know, to guests and be able to leverage that, you know, to kind of share that out. So that's what I was thinking.
The problem I have with it, Pablo, is in the back end, right? So it's like, okay, so I share, does that channel have a files tab? And if it does, where's those files?
Yeah, and I'm thinking that maybe
SharePoint.
SharePoint with folder security, maybe, you know.
Yeah, but that's what we thought was going to happen with the private channels, and they didn't, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where, just based upon how they've set up the architecture, I'm assuming it's wrong.
Yeah.
And let's be frank, like from an information architecture perspective, for a lot of organizations, drawing that clear line in the sand of like, this team is for your team and this is a space for external collab, seems to work out really well. And because the 365 group's at the center of collaboration, whether it's Planner, whether it's the group calendar, Teams, and SharePoint, I can't see a play where, you know what I mean, you get the full breadth of collaboration at the channel level. You know, I don't know. I'm yet to be seen.
So Kip, what you're saying is that as users, we have a hard enough time being safe when we know what the rules are. And when the rules are murky and we're not sure where the data lives, as users, we're going to find it impossible to stay secure.
Yeah, that's the reason why one of the top requests that we get as a firm is, how can I turn off external sharing? Period. Right? And it's like, I mean, because Microsoft made it so easy, you know, almost too easy.
Yep. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you for coming. We appreciate your attendance in our meetings. We appreciate the feedback. We will get together again in whatever the next month is, April, I guess. I think that's a meeting that I might miss, and so it might be a really good meeting. We will be looking, regardless of whether I'm there or not, for a topic. And so if there's something that you would like to have us cover, drop a note in this Teams chat, send an email to info@utahsharepoint.org. I think that's utsharepoint.org, right, Greg?
Yep.
Hit us up on Facebook, on Twitter, on Meetup. We will meet this Thursday and pick the topic. And so if you've got something, get it to us in the next couple of days. I will get around to posting this on YouTube in the next week so that you can share that as well with anyone else. And if you're watching us on YouTube, please come join us live in April. Thanks, everyone, and have a great Tuesday.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Everyone bring a buddy next month. Is that the challenge?
That's the challenge. Bring a buddy.
Oh, yeah.
Buying donuts for all your buddies.
And Kip is hiring.
Yeah.
Look at the chat right there. So
a lot.
Yeah.
So what are you looking for, Kip?
SharePoint consultants and developers primarily.
Yeah. AvePoint's doing a lot of hiring as well. Go take a look at the site. If there's anybody that knows somebody that's interested, point them my way. I'm happy to provide an introduction over the hiring manager. So.
And Greg pointed out earlier a administrator role at Merrick Bank, was it?
Yep.
That was you, Greg, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
So there's opportunities. Go get them.
Yeah. It's nice seeing you guys.
Right.
Even though you're busting my balls the whole time.
See you, man.
See ya.
Nothing changes, Kip.
All right. See you guys.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.